I stood in the corner of the graduation party, champagne glass trembling in my hand, watching my daughter pretend I didn't exist. Melanie laughed with her new friends, her voice bright and confident, while I wore the uniform she'd given me that morning. "Just for tonight, Mom," she'd said. "Please." The apron felt like a noose. The marble floors beneath my feet were so polished I could see my reflection, distorted and small. I didn't know that by midnight, everything we'd built on lies would come crashing down, and I'd have to choose between my daughter and my dignity. I didn't know that the man who destroyed me 18 years ago was standing 20 feet away, about to walk back into our lives. If this story speaks to you, please subscribe. This channel is new, and we're sharing real stories like this every single day. Stories that need to be heard. Stories about people like us, trying to survive in a world that wasn't built for our kind of struggling. My name is Patricia, but everyone calls me Pati. For 18 years, I raised Melanie alone, working 3 jobs to keep us fed. Her father vanished when I was 2 months pregnant, left me with nothing but a broken promise, and his last name on a piece of paper I never used. I cleaned houses during the day, the smell of bleach permanently embedded in my hands. I waited tables at night, my feet aching so badly some mornings I could barely stand. And somehow, through scholarships and lies on financial aid forms and skipped meals so Melanie could eat, I managed to get my daughter into St. Catherine's Academy. It was the best school in the city, the kind of place where girls wore pearls to class and talked about summer homes in Europe. I wanted her to have chances I never had, opportunities. A future that didn't smell like cleaning solution and desperation. But I didn't expect her to be ashamed of them, of me, of everything we'd survived together. The shift started slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice. Sophomore year, she stopped inviting me to parent events. Junior year, she started saying I was busy with work when friends asked to meet me. Senior year, she invented a whole new mother, a businesswoman who traveled constantly, a woman who wore designer suits and spoke 3 languages, a woman who didn't exist. The party was at Belen's house, a mansion with marble floors and a garden bigger than our entire neighborhood, wrought iron gates, a fountain in the driveway that probably cost more than I'd earned in 5 years. Melanie had been friends with Belen since sophomore year, and I'd watched my daughter slowly transform into someone I barely recognized. New accent, softer at the edges, losing the rough vowels of our neighborhood. New clothes I couldn't afford but never questioned because I didn't want to know where they came from. New stories about a life that had never happened. When she asked me to come to the graduation party as hired help, something inside me cracked clean through. I stood in our tiny kitchen, the request hanging between us like smoke, and I saw the desperation in her eyes, the fear of losing this world she'd worked so hard to enter, the terror that someone would find out the truth and it would all disappear. So I said yes. I told myself it was just one night, one small sacrifice so she could have this moment, this culmination of everything we'd worked for. I should have said no. I should have told her that shame is a poison that kills slowly, from the inside out. But I was tired, so tired of fighting. So I put on the uniform and became invisible in my own daughter's life. I circled the room with trays of canapes, a ghost in black and white. The other mothers wore silk and diamonds, their laughter light and easy. They talked about vacation homes and college acceptances and charity galas. I wore shame like a second skin, heavy and suffocating. Melanie wouldn't look at me. Every time I passed near her group, she would turn slightly away, angle her body so I wasn't in her line of sight. When Belen's mother asked who catered the event, Melanie jumped in quickly, her voice too bright. "Just local staff," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "Nobody special. Nobody special." The words burned like acid. I'd given up everything for her. Everything. And I was nobody special. The evening unraveled slowly, then all at once. I was refilling glasses near the terrace when I heard Belen's father arrive late, his voice carrying across the garden. Deep. Familiar in a way that made my stomach drop. Guillermo. The name hit me like a fist to the chest. I turned and there he was, older but unmistakable, silver at his temples now, lines around his eyes, but the same face that had promised me forever and disappeared into the night 18 years ago without a word, without a forwarding address, without a single backward glance. Our eyes met across the garden. His face went white, then red, then white again. He froze mid-step, champagne glass halfway to his lips. He knew. I knew. And suddenly, Belen was grabbing his arm, pulling him toward her friends, toward Melanie, and I watched him do the math in real time. This girl with his eyes, his cheekbones, my stubborn chin and his long fingers, his daughter, the one he'd abandoned before she was born, the one he'd never asked about, never wondered about, never lost sleep over while I was losing mine every single night. I should have walked away, should have stayed silent, should have protected both of them from this moment. But 18 years of carrying that weight alone had made me reckless. 18 years of watching Melanie ask about her father, creating stories about him, believing he must have had good reasons for leaving. 18 years of lying to protect a man who'd never protected us. I approached them, tray still in hand, my heart hammering so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Guillermo's voice came out strangled, barely audible. "Patricia?" Melanie's head snapped toward me. Confusion flickered across her face. Then something worse. Recognition. She realized in that moment that I wasn't just the help. I was someone this important man knew. "You two know each other?" Belen asked, curious, smiling, innocent. She had no idea what bomb was about to detonate in the middle of her perfect garden party. The silence stretched too long. A string pulled taut, about to snap. Guillermo recovered first, that old charm sliding back into place like a mask. We knew each other. Long time ago. Different lives. His eyes begged me to stay quiet, to protect him. Again. Always again. But Melanie was staring at me now, really seeing me for the first time all evening. "Mom?" The word came out small, uncertain. She'd forgotten to hide me. The terrace went silent. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Glasses paused halfway to lips. Belen's mouth opened in shock. "Mom? I thought she was the help," Melanie finished, her voice breaking. "I told you she was the help." Someone laughed, sharp and cruel. Sebastian, Belen's older brother, a boy I'd watched mock scholarship students for years. A boy who wore his privilege like armor and his cruelty like a crown. Oh my God, this is priceless. Melanie's been lying this whole time. The scholarship kid pretending to be one of us. I watched my daughter's face collapse. All that carefully constructed confidence crumbling like a sandcastle hit by a wave. She looked at Guillermo, then at me, and I saw her connecting pieces she didn't want to fit together. Pieces that formed a picture she'd been running from her whole life. "Is he—" She couldn't finish the question. Guillermo stepped back, literally stepped away from her. "Belen, take your brother inside. Now." But Sebastian wasn't done. He was enjoying this too much, the way predators enjoy cornered prey. "Wait, so the maid is actually Melanie's mom, and Mr. Mendoza is— what? Her dad?" He grinned, vicious and delighted. "This is better than any telenovela. Does your wife know you have a secret love child?" Melanie turned on me, eyes bright with tears and rage, and something that looked like hatred. "Why are you here? Why did you come? You've ruined everything. Everything I worked for. Everything I built. You destroyed it in 5 seconds. You invited me," I said quietly, my voice steady even though my hands were shaking. "You asked me to pretend to be someone else so you could pretend to be someone you're not. Because I'm ashamed." The words exploded out of her, raw and desperate. "Because I'm tired of being poor. Tired of being nobody. Tired of wearing the same 3 dresses while everyone else has closets full of designer clothes. Tired of living in a neighborhood where gunshots keep us awake at night. Tired of having nothing. Being nothing. Coming from nothing. I wanted one night. Just one night where I belonged somewhere. Where I didn't have to apologize for existing." The pain in her voice cut through my anger. Because I understood. God, I understood that exhaustion. That desperate need to be someone different. Someone worthy. Guillermo moved toward her, his hand reaching out, and something protective and furious rose in my chest like a wave. "Don't!" I warned him, my voice low and dangerous. "Don't you dare comfort her now. You don't get to play father after 18 years of silence. You don't get to touch her when you never held her as a baby, never walked her to school, never sat up with her when she had nightmares." His jaw tightened, defensive. "You never told me." I tried. My voice shook with 18 years of suppressed rage. "I called your office 17 times. I went there in person, 6 months pregnant, and your secretary told me you'd moved on and didn't want to be contacted. I sent you letters. You never responded, never even opened them. So yes, I moved on too, alone, with a newborn and no money and no family and no one to help me when I thought I was going to die from exhaustion and fear. Melanie looked between us, and I watched understanding dawn in her eyes. Horrible, crushing understanding. He's my father. He's been here this whole time, living in the city, going to the same restaurants, shopping at the same stores, and you never told me. You let me wonder. You let me make up stories about him being dead or overseas or a hero who couldn't stay. He was just here, not caring. He never wanted to know, I said, each word feeling like pulling out a piece of glass embedded deep in skin. There's a difference between not knowing and choosing not to know. He chose not to know you. Guillermo's face twisted. That's not fair, Patricia. I was young. I was scared. I was 19, I shouted, and the whole party heard. 19 years old and terrified and alone, and I didn't run. I didn't get to be scared. I had to be strong because there was a life depending on me. So, don't you dare make excuses about being young. The party ended in chaos. Guests scattered like startled birds, whispers following us like ghosts. I heard fragments as I walked away. Did you hear? The scholarship girl. Secret baby. That poor man's wife. Belen pulled Melanie aside, and I watched their friendship fracture in real time. Belen's face cycled through shock, betrayal, confusion. Melanie just stood there, tears streaming, saying nothing. There was nothing to say that would fix it. Melanie came home 3 hours later, face blotchy from crying, eyes red and swollen. She didn't look at me, just walked straight to her room and closed the door. I heard drawers opening, things being moved, the sound of furniture scraping against floor. When I knocked, she didn't answer. When I tried the handle, it was locked. Melanie, please, let's talk about this. Silence. I know you're angry. I know I embarrassed you. But we need to go away. Her voice was flat, dead. Just go away, Mom. You've done enough. I slept on the couch that night, or tried to sleep. Mostly I stared at the ceiling, replaying the evening, wondering if I could have handled it differently, if I should have stayed quiet, let the lie continue. But lies have weight, and eventually, that weight becomes too much to carry. The next morning, I found my jewelry box empty, the gold necklace my mother left me, the one thing I had of hers after she died, the silver bracelet I'd been saving to sell in an emergency, our safety net, gone. I found the pawn ticket in the trash, dated the night of the party, timestamp at 11:47 p.m. She'd needed cab money to run away from her own life, from me. The ticket said she'd gotten $300. The necklace alone was worth at least $1,000, but pawnshops prey on desperation. They smell it on you, and they pay accordingly. I should have been angry, should have stormed into her room and demanded explanations. Instead, I just felt tired, so tired my bones ached with it, tired of carrying everything alone, tired of watching my daughter hate where she came from, tired of pretending that love could survive shame, tired of being nobody special. But then the phone rang. Hospital. The word alone made my stomach drop. My husband, Ivan, had been in an accident. No, not an accident. A confrontation. My stepdaughter, Ivana, was pregnant, and she'd told him the baby wasn't her boyfriend, Marco's. It was Sebastian's, Belen's brother, the same boy who'd mocked Melanie at the party, the same boy who'd laughed at us. Ivan had lost control, screamed at Ivana, grabbed her. She'd tried to get away, and in the chaos she'd fallen down half a flight of stairs. They were doing everything they could. But the baby was... I didn't let her finish. I ran. Left my coffee on the counter. Didn't lock the door. Just ran. At the hospital, I found Ivan in the waiting room, head in his hands. He looked smaller somehow. Diminished. When he looked up at me, I saw something I'd never seen before. Genuine fear. Raw, and animal, and terrifying. I didn't mean to, he whispered, his voice cracking. I couldn't believe she'd been lying to me, that the baby wasn't Marco's, that she'd been sleeping with that rich boy behind everyone's back. I couldn't believe my daughter would do that. Wasn't yours to control, I finished quietly. She's 19, Ivan. Her body, her choice, her consequence. You don't get to put your hands on her because you're angry. He looked at me like I was a stranger, like he was seeing me clearly for the first time, and didn't like what he found. How can you be so calm? She's been lying to all of us, making fools of us. Like Melanie lied to me? I asked. Like you've been lying to yourself about what kind of man you are? What kind of father? The words hung between us, heavy and damning. In the harsh hospital light, fluorescent and unforgiving, I saw him clearly, really saw him. The casual cruelty I'd been excusing for 3 years. The need to control everything, everyone. The way he'd slowly isolated me from my friends, my work, my own daughter. How he criticized my cooking, my clothes, my opinions. How he made me feel small and grateful for his attention. I'd been so grateful when he married me 2 years after Melanie started high school. Grateful that someone wanted me despite my baggage. Grateful for the stability, the second income, the father figure for Melanie. I'd ignored the warning signs because I was tired of being alone, tired of shouldering everything by myself. But I was more alone with him than I'd ever been by myself. Ivana survived, but barely. The doctors said it wasn't the fall, not directly. Complications, severe stress, a pregnancy that was already fragile, already at risk. The baby, a girl, they said. She would have been a girl. Didn't make it. Ivana was sedated, unconscious, and I sat with her for hours while Ivan paced the hallway, working himself into righteous fury. He wanted someone to punish. Sebastian, for seducing his daughter. Ivana, for lying. Marco, for not being man enough to keep her faithful. Me, for raising Melanie to be a liar, for bringing that influence into his house. Anyone but himself. When he finally came back into the room, his anger had found its target. "This is your fault too," he spat, voice low but venomous. "You raised Melanie to be a liar, to be ashamed of who she is. You raised her to think she needed to hide and scheme to get ahead. And that influenced Ivana, poisoned her against her own family." I stood up slowly, my whole body thrumming with suppressed rage. "No," I said clearly, each word deliberate. "You taught her that shame was necessary, that we had to hide who we were to be worthy of love, that our worth was tied to your approval, your control. I'm done hiding, and I'm done with you." His face darkened. "You don't get to leave. You're my wife. I'm your victim," I corrected. "There's a difference. And I'm leaving before I become your casualty." I walked out of that hospital room, out of that building, and I didn't look back. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely get my key in the car door, but I managed. I drove home through mid-morning traffic, my mind eerily calm. When I got there, Melanie was in the kitchen, pacing. She'd heard about Ivana. The neighborhood gossip network moved faster than news channels. About Sebastian, about the baby. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow. "Mom, stole from me," I said, setting my keys on the counter with careful precision. "Denied me in front of everyone. Pretended I didn't exist. Treated me like I was something shameful that needed to be hidden." "I know." Tears streamed down her face, faster than she could wipe them away. "I know, and I'm so sorry. I just wanted to be someone different. Someone better. Someone who didn't have to apologize for existing. Someone richer," I corrected gently. "Not better. There's nothing better about people who mock where you came from. Nothing noble about wealth built on looking down at others." She crumpled into a chair, her whole body folding in on itself. "Sebastian called me an hour ago. He wanted to make sure I knew about Ivana. He was laughing, Mom. Actually laughing. He said it was karma, that girls like us always get what we deserve when we try to climb above our station. That Ivana thought she could trap him with a baby, and now she's lost everything." Something cold and hard settled in my chest. Girls like us. Poor girls, scholarship girls. Girls who try to climb above their station. Her voice broke like glass. "He's right, isn't he? I tried so hard to be someone I'm not, and look what happened. I destroyed your reputation. I lost Belen. I stole from you. And Ivana lost her baby because men like Sebastian and Ivan think they own us." I interrupted, my voice steel. "Because they think our worth is tied to our obedience. Because they believe they have the right to punish us when we don't perform the way they want. Ivana's loss isn't karma, Melanie. It's tragedy. And you didn't cause it. He did. Ivan did. A system that teaches men they own women's bodies did." She looked up at me, eyes red and swollen. Younger than I'd seen her in years. "But I'm pregnant too." The words fell like stones into still water, sending ripples through everything. I sat down heavily in the chair across from her, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. "What?" "I found out 2 days ago. before the party. I was going to tell you, but then everything happened and She wrapped her arms around herself, protective, defensive. I slept with someone older, someone who said he'd take care of me, help me get out of poverty. He had money, connections. He said if we were together, I'd never have to worry about anything again. I thought if I could just get pregnant, he'd have to marry me, and we'd be okay. We'd finally be okay. You could quit your jobs. We could move somewhere better. I could fix everything. My heart shattered into so many pieces I wasn't sure I'd ever find them all. Who? She wouldn't look at me. Stared at her hands instead, twisting them together until her knuckles went white. Does it matter? He won't answer my calls now. He got what he wanted. And I'm left with this, just like you were left with me. Don't, I said sharply. Don't you dare compare this to you. You were never a burden. Never. Then why was I never enough? The question came out raw, bleeding. Why did you have to work 3 jobs? Why couldn't we have what other people had? Why did I have to be the scholarship kid, the poor kid, the kid everyone looked at with pity? Why wasn't I worth a father who stayed? A life that was easy, a world where I belonged. I reached across the table and took her hands, held them tight even when she tried to pull away. You were always enough. The world was broken, not you. The system was rigged, not you. And I'm sorry I couldn't give you more. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from feeling this way. But Melanie, listen to me. A baby won't fix your life. It will complicate it, make it harder, more exhausting, more expensive, more everything. I know, she whispered. I know that now. But it's too late. It's not too late for honesty, I said. It's not too late to stop running from who we are. And it's not too late to leave this house before Ivan comes home and takes his rage out on both of us. She looked up sharply. What? We're leaving, I said, the decision crystallizing even as I spoke it. Tonight, before he gets back from the hospital. We're taking what we can carry, and we're going somewhere safe. Mom, we can't just... Yes, we can. My voice was iron. Melanie, I've been watching him hurt me for 3 years. Small things at first. Comments. Criticisms. Then controlling what I wore, where I went, who I talked to. Then bruises he said were accidents. And I told myself it wasn't that bad, that I was overreacting, that I should be grateful someone wanted me. But I was wrong. And now you're pregnant, and I need to protect you and this baby the way I protected you before. We're not staying in a house with a man who thinks violence is love. She stared at me, and I watched something shift in her eyes. Understanding. Resolution. Okay, she said. Okay, what do we take? We packed quickly, quietly, like thieves in our own home. Clothes, documents, birth certificates, social security cards, my marriage license that would be useful for the divorce, photos, my mother's wedding ring that I'd hidden after Melanie's pawnshop raid, her high school diploma, medical records, everything that proved we existed, that we had histories and identities beyond Ivan's control. Melanie had been researching women's shelters, I discovered. Had numbers written in the back of her planner, resources circled in red. She'd been planning an escape too, just hadn't had the courage to execute it. We called the closest one, and a woman with a kind voice said they'd send someone to pick us up. Don't wait outside, she said. Stay inside until you see our van. Men like him sometimes come home early. We waited by the window, bags packed, hearts hammering. Every car that passed made us flinch. Every sound from the street made us freeze. And then I saw Ivan's car turning onto our street, still 3 blocks away, and my blood turned to ice. The van's not here yet, Melanie whispered, panicked. Back door, I said. Now. We'll walk to the corner store and wait there. We grabbed our bags and ran. Actually ran through our own house, fleeing like criminals. Out the back door, through the neighbor's yard, apologizing to Mrs. Chen who was watering her garden, and looked at us with knowing, sad eyes. She didn't ask questions, just nodded and turned her back, giving us cover. The van pulled up just as Ivan's car turned into our driveway. We climbed in, breathless and terrified, and the driver, a woman maybe my age with scars on her forearms that told their own story, didn't ask questions either. Just drove, took us away from that house, that life, that version of ourselves that had been slowly dying. The shelter was small, crowded, but safe. Concrete block walls and locked doors, and a list of rules posted in the common area. No drugs. No alcohol. No men allowed inside. No sharing your location with anyone from your previous life. We shared a room with another mother and daughter, both fleeing similar situations. Rosa and her daughter Carmen, who was 16 and pregnant like Melanie. At night, lying in bunk beds that creaked with every movement, we whispered our stories. Rosa had been married 23 years before her husband put her in the hospital. Carmen's baby was the result of rape by her mother's husband. They spoke matter-of-factly, no self-pity, just exhausted acceptance of realities too common to be shocking. I realized how lucky we were. 3 years with Ivan. Rosa had endured 2 decades. We'd gotten out before he did permanent damage. Some women never got out at all. Melanie threw up every morning sickness that lasted all day. I held her hair back, rubbed her back, brought her crackers and ginger tea the shelter provided. We went to free clinics, sat in waiting rooms with other pregnant women in various stages of crisis, applied for assistance programs with forms so complicated they felt deliberately designed to discourage people, started making plans that felt simultaneously impossible and essential. It would be hard, incredibly hard, but hard didn't scare me anymore. Staying scared me. Accepting fear as normal scared me, teaching another generation that abuse was the price of security. That scared me most of all. Guillermo found us 3 weeks later, not through violence or threats, but through Belen. She'd gone to the shelter, volunteered there, and eventually asked the staff if they'd seen us. They wouldn't confirm, but somehow word got back. He stood outside one afternoon, not trying to come in because men weren't allowed, just waiting, patient, defeated looking. I went out to meet him, keeping the building between us, ready to run. "What do you want?" To apologize. He looked older, exhausted. "Belen told me where you were. She wanted you to know she's sorry. For the party, for Sebastian, for not defending Melanie when it mattered. She's been volunteering here for 2 weeks, hoping to see you. And you?" I kept my voice flat. "What are you sorry for?" "Everything." His voice cracked like thin ice. "I was 23 and terrified when you got pregnant. I told myself you'd be fine, that you were strong, that I wasn't ready. I've regretted it every single day since, but regret doesn't mean much when you don't act on it, does it? I built a life with someone else, and told myself it was for the best, that you'd moved on, that Melanie probably had a good stepfather. I lied to myself for 18 years, but you never came back, never checked, never wondered if I was alive or dead, if your daughter was healthy or sick, if we were homeless or safe. No." He met my eyes. "I was a coward. I am a coward. But seeing Melanie at that party, seeing what you'd accomplished alone, what she'd become despite me," he swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "I don't deserve forgiveness. I know that. I'm not asking for it. But I want to help now, if you'll let me. Child support. 18 years worth. Legal fees to divorce Ivan. Security deposit for an apartment. College tuition. Whatever you need." Melanie appeared beside me then, moving quietly. Her belly was just starting to show, a small curve under her oversized shirt. She looked at Guillermo with eyes that held no warmth, no daughterly affection, just assessment. "We don't need your money to survive. We've been surviving without you our whole lives." He flinched like she'd struck him. "But we'll take it anyway," she continued, her voice steady. "Not because we're grateful, because you owe it. You owed it 18 years ago. And there's a condition. Anything. Tell the truth. Tell Belen the whole truth. Tell your wife. Tell everyone what you did. Own it. Put your name on my birth certificate where it should have been from the start. Don't hide me anymore. Don't let anyone think I'm some shameful secret." His face went pale. "My reputation. Your reputation?" Melanie laughed, bitter and sharp. "You're worried about your reputation when Mom raised me alone, working herself to exhaustion, never asking anyone for help because she was too proud. When she stayed with a man who hit her because she thought I needed a stable home. When she's in a women's shelter right now because she finally chose herself. I didn't know about Ivan. You didn't ask. You never asked about anything. Not once in 18 years. She stepped forward, and I saw my daughter fully for the first time in years. Strong, clear-eyed, done apologizing. I'm pregnant too, by the way. By a man who promised me security and disappeared the second I told him. Just like you did to her. History repeating because I thought a man could save me from being poor. And you know what? I'm going to be better than both of you. Better than you, and better than him." I'm going to tell this baby the truth, always. Even when it's ugly. Even when it's embarrassing. I'm going to teach him that real strength isn't money or status. It's admitting when you're wrong and doing better. Him? Guillermo's voice softened despite himself. I'm calling him Angel, Melanie said, because we need reminding that goodness exists, that not everyone runs when things get hard, that some people stay and fight and choose love even when it's complicated. Guillermo stood there for a long moment, and I watched genuine shame finally breaking through his defenses. The performance of contrition, giving way to something real and painful. I'll do what you asked, he said quietly. I'll tell the truth. All of it. My wife, my colleagues, everyone. And I'll set up trust funds for Melanie's education, for Angel, for any medical expenses. Not to buy forgiveness, just because it's what I should have done 18 years ago. And therapy, I added. Money for therapy, for all of us, because we're going to need help untangling this mess you helped create. He nodded. Therapy. Yes, whatever you need. He left, and Melanie leaned against me, exhausted. The conversation had taken everything out of her. Did I do the right thing? You did the brave thing, I said. Sometimes they're the same. Sometimes they're different. But you stood up for yourself and for Angel. That's what matters. The divorce from Ivan took 6 months, and was brutal. He fought it viciously, contested every single item, tried to claim our apartment, even though my name was on the lease from before we married, tried to claim our savings, which was laughable because there were no savings, tried to claim rights to Melanie's scholarship fund, which made no legal sense but was clearly just meant to hurt us. He showed up at my work twice, until my boss, a woman who'd left her own abusive marriage, banned him from the premises and walked me to my car for 2 weeks. He sent messages through mutual friends, promising he'd changed, begging me to come home, alternating between apologies and threats. When I didn't respond, the messages got darker, more specific about what he'd do when he found me. But we had documentation, photos I'd taken of bruises over 3 years, hidden in a cloud account he didn't know about, text messages I'd never deleted, witness statements from neighbors who'd heard him yelling, medical records from the hospital visit where I'd lied and said I fell downstairs. The shelter connected us with a lawyer who took the case pro bono, a fierce woman named Sandra, who treated each case like a personal mission. She filed restraining orders, navigated the legal system with expertise born from representing hundreds of women just like me, and slowly, piece by piece, we reclaimed our lives. The apartment, the small savings account I'd had before marrying him, my freedom, my name without his attached to it, my dignity. Guillermo kept his word, which surprised me. He told his wife about me, about Melanie. His marriage didn't survive. She left him within a week, took their son, filed for divorce. I felt guilty about that for approximately 5 minutes before remembering that his choices weren't my responsibility. He'd made his bed 18 years ago. Now he got to lie in it. Belen reached out to Melanie through social media. They met for coffee, awkward and painful, and talked for 3 hours, working through hurt and confusion and betrayal. They wouldn't be best friends again, maybe ever, but there was understanding. A recognition that they'd both been trapped in roles written by other people's expectations. Belen started volunteering at the women's shelter regularly, not just to see us, but because she wanted to. She brought donations, clothes, diapers, gift cards. She used her family's connections to get job interviews for women leaving abusive situations. She became an advocate in a way I never expected from a girl who'd grown up so privileged. Sebastian, meanwhile, faced consequences when Ivana's family pressed charges. Not for the pregnancy, you can't prosecute consensual sex between adults, but for harassment and threats he'd sent her when she told him about the baby. Text messages where he called her a whore, said he'd ruin her reputation, threatened to tell everyone she'd tried to trap him. Evidence of who he really was behind the charm and money. His father paid for expensive lawyers, of course. He got probation, community service, a slap on the wrist, but his reputation was damaged. The story spread through their social circle, the Mendoza boy who got a girl pregnant and mocked her loss. Some people defended him. Boys will be boys. She should have been more careful, but others, especially women who'd experienced similar treatment, stopped inviting him to events, stopped introducing him to their daughters. created social consequences that money couldn't erase. It wasn't justice. Not really. But it was something. Melanie gave birth to Angel on a Tuesday morning in September. I held her hand through 22 hours of labor, watched her scream and cry and beg for it to be over, watched her dig deeper than she knew she could go, finding strength in places she didn't know existed. When they finally placed that tiny boy in her arms, she looked at me with tears streaming down her face, and I saw everything we'd been through reflected in her eyes. "I'm terrified, Mom," she whispered, staring at this small person who was now her responsibility. "What if I mess him up? What if I can't give him what he needs? What if I become like—" "You won't," I said firmly, "because you're already asking those questions, because you're already aware, and because you have me, and we have each other, and that's more than either of us had before." She nodded, but I could see the fear still there, the weight of motherhood settling on shoulders barely ready for it. "He's so small, so perfect. I don't deserve him." "Maybe not," I said honestly, "but he's yours anyway. That's how it works. We don't earn our children. We just do our best by them and hope it's enough." Angel opened his eyes then, dark and unfocused, looking at nothing and everything. Melanie laughed through her tears, and I saw my daughter transform in that moment, saw her childhood end and something else begin, something harder and more beautiful. The man who'd gotten her pregnant never came, never called, never acknowledged his son's existence. Melanie tried reaching out once more after Angel was born, sent a photo with the message, "You have a son. He's healthy. He's beautiful. You're missing everything." He blocked her number. Some men, I learned, will always run, will always choose comfort over courage. We couldn't change that. We could only decide what example to set for Angel, what kind of manhood to model through our own strength. Melanie is 20 now. Angel is 14 months old, taking his first wobbly steps and saying "mama" and "abuela" with equal enthusiasm. We live in a small apartment, the three of us. Money still tight, but manageable. Guillermo's child support helps. So does the settlement from my divorce. So do the 3 jobs I've gone down to 2, now that we have childcare through a program at the shelter. Some mornings I wake up tired, my body aching from years of hard work that don't magically disappear just because circumstances improve. I lie there wondering if we'll make it, if this fragile peace we've built will hold. But then I hear Melanie singing to Angel in the next room, teaching him Spanish words I taught her, and I know we already have made it. We've made it past shame, past silence, past the belief that we needed permission to take up space in the world. Melanie enrolled in community college last semester, taking online classes while Angel naps. She's studying nursing, wants to work with new mothers eventually, especially young ones who are scared and alone. "Someone should have told me I had options," she said when she declared her major. "Someone should have said it was okay to be afraid, that being a young mother doesn't mean your life is over. I want to be that person for other girls. I want them to know that mistakes don't define you. What you do after the mistakes, that's what matters." I watched her fill out the application, Angel sleeping against her chest in a carrier, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the desperate, grasping kind that feels like drowning. The quiet, steady kind. The kind that says maybe we'll make it. Maybe we already are. She takes Angel to the park sometimes, and I watch from a bench as she pushes him on the baby swings. Other mothers are there, some our age, some older. They talk about their children, their struggles, their lives. Nobody asks Melanie where Angel's father is. Nobody judges her for being young and single. They just share tips on teething and nap schedules and the best places to find affordable diapers. Community, I've learned, isn't just about where you live. It's about who shows up, who stays, who sees you on your worst days and doesn't turn away. Guillermo visits twice a month, scheduled visits we agreed on through lawyers. It's awkward still, probably always will be, but he's trying. He brings books for Angel, age-appropriate toys, instead of expensive things that make him feel better about his absence. He asks how we're doing, actually listens to the answers, sits on our worn couch, and holds his grandson while Melanie studies, and I make dinner. He'll never be the father Melanie needed growing up. That ship sailed 18 years ago, and there's no calling it back. But he's becoming someone honest. Someone who owns his failures instead of hiding from them. Someone who shows up, even when it's uncomfortable. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes it has to be. His relationship with Belen is strained. She struggles with the revelation that her father isn't who she thought he was, that he abandoned a child, built a second family while pretending the first never existed. They're in therapy together, working through it. I don't know if they'll repair things completely. That's their journey, not ours. But Belen still volunteers at the shelter, still advocates for women in situations like ours. She used her platform, because rich girls with good hearts have platforms, to fundraise, to raise awareness, to make it harder for people to look away from domestic violence. She's not our friend exactly. The relationship is too complicated for that simple word. But she's an ally, and that matters. Ivana recovered physically, though I know the loss of her baby still haunts her. She left her father's house as soon as she could, got her own apartment with help from a domestic violence recovery program, started therapy, got a job at a bookstore, small steps toward a life that was hers instead of what someone else demanded. Last month, she showed up at our door unannounced. I opened it to find her standing there with flowers, face uncertain. I heard what Melanie said at the hospital, she told me, about bodies and choices and consequences, about how we don't owe men control over our lives just because they're angry or scared or disappointed. It helped. I wanted to say thank you. We invited her in for coffee. She held Angel and cried a little, and Melanie held her hand, and I watched these two young women, both scarred by different men, both carrying losses that would never fully heal, choose to support each other anyway. I wanted to keep her, Ivana whispered, tears dripping onto Angel's soft hair. My daughter. I was going to name her Sophia. I had plans. I was going to be a good mother, better than mine was. And then he took that from me, my father, because he was angry and needed someone to punish. It wasn't your fault, Melanie said firmly. None of it was your fault. I know that intellectually, Ivana said, but knowing and feeling are different things. I keep thinking about what I could have done differently, how I could have protected her. You were trying to protect yourself, I said quietly. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't save anyone while you're drowning. Sometimes survival is the only victory we get, and that has to be enough. Ivana comes over now sometimes, helps watch Angel while Melanie studies. The three of us have formed an unlikely family, 3 generations of women who survived men who thought they owned us. We cook together, watch terrible reality TV together, share stories about our days, creating normalcy from broken pieces. Rosa and Carmen moved out of the shelter 6 months ago, got their own place. Carmen had her baby, a girl she named Esperanza, Hope. We visit each other, our babies playing together on blankets on the floor while we talk about everything and nothing, about how hard it is, how worth it, how some days we're barely holding on and other days we feel invincible. This is what community looks like, I think. Not perfect people living perfect lives, but broken people choosing to show up for each other anyway, choosing honesty over performance, choosing vulnerability over pretense. I think about that graduation party sometimes, how desperate I was to be invisible, to protect Melanie's lie, how she was desperate to be someone else, someone worthy of belonging. We were both so tired of being poor, of being dismissed, of fighting just to exist with dignity. We made terrible choices out of that exhaustion. But exhaustion doesn't justify cruelty, and shame doesn't excuse cowardice. I stayed with Yvonne too long, ignored warning signs because I thought I deserved to settle. Melanie stole from me and denied me because she thought her worth was tied to other people's perception. Guillermo abandoned us because fear felt easier than responsibility. Sebastian used his power to hurt because no one had ever taught him that cruelty has consequences. We all played parts in a story that didn't have to end in tragedy. The difference is what we did next, who we chose to become when the lies unraveled and the truth demanded a response. I chose to leave, to value my safety over comfort, my dignity over stability. Melanie chose honesty, even when it meant facing consequences for her lies. Guillermo chose accountability, even when it cost him his marriage. And together, slowly, we're building something new, not perfect, not comfortable, but real. A life where my grandson will grow up, knowing his mother was once ashamed of her origins, and chose to let that shame go. Where he'll know his grandfather made terrible mistakes, and spent the rest of his life trying to balance scales that can never fully be balanced. Where he'll know his grandmother loved fiercely, even when that love wasn't returned the way she deserved. where he'll know that being poor doesn't mean being worthless, that needing help doesn't mean being weak, that the measure of a person isn't their bank account or their address or their last name, but their willingness to show up honestly, especially when it's hard. Angel is 14 months old now. He has Guillermo's eyes and Melanie's stubborn chin and my mother's smile. When I hold him, I whisper promises I intend to keep. I tell him about the women who came before him, who survived and scraped and built lives from nothing. I tell him about the men who failed and the ones who tried to do better. I tell him that his story doesn't have to be theirs, that he gets to choose, every single day, who he wants to become. I tell him about his mother, who made mistakes when she was young and scared, but who chose to be better, who works 2 jobs and takes classes and still finds time to read him stories before bed, even when she's exhausted, who teaches him that success isn't about money or status, but about integrity and kindness, and showing up for the people you love. I tell him about his great-grandmother, my mother, who cleaned other people's houses for 40 years and never complained, who taught me that there's dignity in all work, that our jobs don't define our worth, who died before she could meet Melanie, but who would have loved her fiercely, loved him fiercely, loved all of us despite and because of our imperfections. And I tell him that he's loved, that he was wanted, even if his biological father couldn't see it, that he belongs, not because of what he has or where he lives, but because he exists, because he's ours, because love doesn't require perfection. It just requires presence. Yesterday, Melanie came home from class excited, practically vibrating with energy. She'd aced an exam in her anatomy course, one she'd been dreading for weeks. 97%, Mom. 97. The professor wrote that I should consider medical school eventually, that I have the aptitude for it. I hugged her tight, feeling her tremble with pride and disbelief. I'm proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you, she said into my shoulder. Without you believing I could be more than my mistakes. Without you showing me what it looks like to start over. We did it together, I corrected. You, me, and this little one. I gestured to Angel, who was trying to eat a board book instead of looking at it. We're a team. She pulled back, wiped her eyes. I wrote something in my journal last night, about the party, about everything that happened after. I wanted to understand it, you know? Make sense of it. And did you? Sort of. She sat down, picking up Angel and settling him on her lap. I realized I was trying to become someone else because I thought who I was wasn't enough. But the people I was trying to impress, they weren't better than me. They just had more money. And money doesn't make you kinder or braver or more worthy of love. I had to lose everything to figure that out. You didn't lose everything, I said quietly. You lost people who only valued you for a lie. That's not losing. That's discovering the truth. She nodded slowly. Belen texted me yesterday. Said she's sorry she didn't speak up at the party. That she should have defended me. Should have told Sebastian to shut up. She said she's learning that staying silent makes her complicit. That's big of her. Yeah. Melanie smiled. Small, but genuine. I told her I'm sorry too. For lying. For using her friendship as a social ladder. For not trusting that she might have liked me for who I actually am, not who I was pretending to be. Growth, I thought. Looks like this. Like 2 young women acknowledging their mistakes and choosing to do better. Like relationships rebuilt on truth instead of performance. Like second chances offered and accepted with humility. Last week, the shelter asked if I'd be willing to speak at their annual fundraiser, share my story, help donors understand why their contributions matter. I said yes, even though the thought of standing in front of a room full of people and exposing my life terrifies me. But I've learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite fear. It's choosing honesty even when lying would be easier. It's standing up and saying, this happened to me, and I survived, and you can too. Melanie is coming with me. She's going to speak too, about being a teenage mother, about the shame society puts on young women who get pregnant, about how support and resources matter more than judgment, about how she almost let that shame destroy her relationship with me, but chose connection instead. We practiced our speeches last night after Angel went to sleep. Melanie stumbled over her words, started crying halfway through, had to stop and collect herself. I don't know if I can do this, she said, voice shaking. Stand up there and admit everything. Let strangers know about my mistakes. Your mistakes don't define you. I reminded her. Your recovery does. Your growth does. The person you're becoming does. But what if they judge me? Some will, I said honestly. Some people will always judge because it makes them feel superior. But others will see themselves in your story, will feel less alone, will realize they're not the only ones struggling. That's who we're speaking for. Not the judges, the ones who need to hear that survival is possible. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Okay. For them. For the women still trapped in situations like we were. For the girls who think a man can save them. For the mothers working 3 jobs and wondering if their kids will resent them for not having more. For all of us, I agreed. For every woman who's been told she's not enough and chose to believe it until she couldn't anymore. The fundraiser is next month. I've already picked out what I'm wearing. Not something new, because I don't need new clothes to validate my worth. Just something clean and professional. Something that says I'm not ashamed anymore. Guillermo asked if he could come, sit in the audience. I told him yes. He should hear our story from us, see what his absence created. Not to shame him, he's already drowning in shame, but to witness, to understand that actions have consequences that ripple for decades. Yvonne sent a message through a mutual acquaintance, saying he wants to see me, to talk things through. I deleted the message without responding. There's nothing to talk through. I've said everything I need to say, and his need for closure doesn't obligate me to provide it. Some doors, once closed, should stay that way. Ivana is doing better. She started dating someone new, a man who knows her history and loves her anyway, who doesn't need her to be perfect or undamaged, who shows up consistently, calls when he says he will, treats her with the respect she's learning to demand. She says it feels strange, being treated well, that sometimes she waits for the other shoe to drop, for him to reveal cruelty hiding beneath kindness. That's trauma, I told her when she confessed this over coffee. Your body learned that love comes with violence, so it's waiting for the pattern to repeat. But you get to write a new pattern. You get to teach yourself that good men exist, even if they're rare. Is it fair to him, though? She asked. That I'm constantly suspicious? That I flinch when he moves too fast? That I can't fully trust him even though he's never given me reason not to? Healing isn't fair, I said gently. It's not neat or convenient. It's messy and slow and full of setbacks. The question isn't whether it's fair to him. The question is whether he's willing to be patient while you heal. If he is, he's worth keeping. If he's not the right person for where you are right now. She nodded, absorbing this. Thank you, for always being honest, for not sugarcoating things or telling me what I want to hear. I spent too many years lying to myself, I said. I won't do it anymore. Not to you. Not to anyone. Angel took his first real steps yesterday. Not the wobbly 1 or 2 before collapsing we'd been seeing, but an actual walk. 5 steps from the couch to where Melanie stood with her arms outstretched. She burst into tears, scooped him up, spun him around. Did you see that, Mom? Did you see him walk? I saw, and I felt something break open in my chest. Not pain, but its opposite. Joy so pure it almost hurt. This small human, this child born from mistakes and desperation and complicated circumstances, taking his first independent steps, moving forward, growing. He's going to be okay, Melanie whispered, clutching him tight. Isn't he? Despite everything. Despite his parents being so young and his father not being here and us living in a tiny apartment, he's going to be okay? Better than okay, I promised. Because he has you. Because he has us. Because he's growing up watching women who refuse to settle, who leave when staying becomes dangerous, who choose truth over comfort. That's worth more than money, more than a big house or a father who's only present physically. It's worth everything. We celebrated with ice cream, even though Angel mostly just smooshed it into his face and hair. Melanie took 1,000,000 photos, sent them to Belen and Ivana and Rosa, posted one on social media with the caption, "First steps toward the rest of his life." The comments filled with congratulations, with heart emojis, with encouragement from people who'd followed our story, because Melanie had decided, months ago, to stop hiding, to post about being a single mother, about living in a small apartment, about receiving assistance and going to community college and working hard for a future that wasn't guaranteed. She'd made her life public not for attention, but for honesty, to show other young mothers they weren't alone. That struggle wasn't shameful, that doing your best was enough, even when your best looked nothing like what society said it should. Some people criticized her for it, called her irresponsible, said she shouldn't have had a baby she couldn't afford, said she was glamorizing teen pregnancy. But more people, so many more, thanked her, said her honesty helped them feel less alone, said seeing her continue her education while raising a child gave them hope they could do it too. I used to think being seen meant being perfect, Melanie told me once, scrolling through comments. Now I think being seen means being real, and real is messy and hard and beautiful all at once. I started therapy 3 months ago, individual sessions to work through years of trauma I'd been carrying without acknowledging. The therapist, Dr. Martinez, is patient and kind, and doesn't let me minimize my experiences the way I've learned to do. You describe staying with Yvonne like it was a minor inconvenience, she pointed out in our second session. But you were being abused, physically, emotionally, financially. That's not inconvenient. That's traumatic. Other women have it worse, I said automatically. That's not how trauma works, she replied gently. Someone else's suffering doesn't negate yours. You don't need to earn the right to acknowledge pain. It's hard, retraining my brain. Learning to say I was abused instead of, it wasn't that bad. Learning to recognize patterns I've repeated my whole life. Choosing men who needed saving. Minimizing my own needs. Equating sacrifice with love. Learning that boundaries aren't selfish. That asking for help isn't weakness. That I deserve peace. Melanie started therapy too. We go to different therapists, talk about different things, but we're both committed to breaking cycles, to not passing our trauma to Angel, to giving him a childhood where love feels safe instead of conditional. I don't want him to learn that men leave, Melanie said in one of our late-night conversations, the kind we have when Angel is asleep and exhaustion makes us honest, or that women have to work themselves to death to prove they're worthy, or that poverty is shameful, or that asking for help means you failed. Then we teach him different, I said simply. We show him that people stay when they commit to staying. That work has dignity, but doesn't define worth. That need is human. That failure is just trying and learning and trying again. Do you think we can really do that? Change what we learned? We already are, I pointed out. You didn't repeat my pattern of staying with an abusive man. I didn't repeat my mother's pattern of never leaving a situation, no matter how bad. We're learning, growing. That's all we can do. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever felt the weight of shame or the prison of other people's expectations, I hope you'll share it. Not because it's extraordinary. It's not. Because it's ordinary. Because variations of this story play out in homes everywhere, every day. Women trying to survive. Daughters trying to belong. Families breaking and rebuilding and breaking again until they finally find a foundation that holds. And I hope you'll subscribe to this channel, because stories like this, stories about ordinary people choosing extraordinary courage, deserve to be heard. Every smile does hide a story. Sometimes it's pain, sometimes it's shame, but sometimes if we're brave enough to tell the truth, it's transformation. Sometimes it's survival. Sometimes it's the quiet triumph of waking up one more day and choosing to keep going. We're here every day, sharing these moments. These reminders that we're all more than our worst choices, that redemption is possible, even when it's messy, that love, the real kind, doesn't require perfection. It just requires showing up again and again, even when it hurts, even when you're tired, even when you're not sure you can take another step. Because here's what I've learned. You can. You always can. One more breath, one more day, one more choice to do better, be better, love better. That's all any of us are doing. Moving forward, carrying our scars, teaching the next generation that wounds heal and strength comes from surviving them. Angel will grow up knowing his grandmother left a dangerous situation and built a safe one, knowing his mother made mistakes and chose to learn from them, knowing his grandfather failed and spent years trying to make amends, knowing that family isn't about perfection, it's about presence. About showing up imperfectly and loving anyway. That's the story I want him to know. Not a fairy tale where everything works out perfectly, but a real story, about real people, about struggle and survival and the stubborn, resilient hope that refuses to die no matter how hard the world tries to extinguish it. That's our story. That's every story, really, if you dig deep enough. Past the performance and the pretense and the carefully curated images we show the world, We're all just trying, failing sometimes, getting up anyway. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's everything. Thank you for listening to mine, for witnessing our struggle and our survival, for seeing us, not as cautionary tales or inspiration porn or anything other than human beings doing our best with what we have. That's all any of us can do. And it turns out, when you stop trying to be perfect and just try to be real, that's more than enough. It's everything.